Time now to take you through the Sunday papers. Here with me to review them are the author and journalist Nikki Hodgson and the broadcaster and writer Edward Adu. So morning to both of you. Lovely to see you both. Edward, one day we'll get you in here as well and we'll have a bit of a party.
I know what I was going to say. I was going to say, I feel slightly bad that I'm at home and Nikki's in the studio and you're there as well, Anna. But fingers crossed, I'll be there.
Excellent. I've got that recorded, so we'll get back to you on that. We're going to kick off with you, actually, Edward, because you wanted to talk about the front page of the Sunday Telegraph, first of all, and it's a story that we've been covering here on Sky News as well today. This decision by Rishi Sunak to scrap new smart motorways. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, so apparently this is going to save £1 billion. They're introduced in 2006, and for a lot of motorists, I'm not sure about you, Anna and Nikki, if you're driving along on a motorway, if you break down, you usually will end up on the hard shoulder. Now, with these smart motorways, if that happens, usually it's the technology in place will detect that you've broken down and it will prevent other cars. That's what it's supposed to be, but it's failed on numerous occasions, which has led to fatality. Sadly, 50 people have died as a result of this, and many families have campaigned, have said to the government, look, we've got to get rid of this. This is not working. You know, we've lost loved ones because of this. I used to drive up the M1 when I had with my regular radio show, and sort of north of Watford up to Luton, it seemed to be effective. But I could just see the fear on some motorist faces being sort of stranded on the hard shoulder, thinking, please do not fail. I think that's the issue, where you expect this system to work. It's supposed to be, robust, efficient, but clearly it hasn't worked. So the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, he's listened and he said, well, look, all the plans to build other smart motorways will be shelved. Now, the question which will be asked is the current smart motorways in place, will they be adjusted? I mean, I don't think they'll be able to get rid of them, but clearly, if government, the Prime Minister has decided, well, look, we've got to shelve it, then they've got to think about preventing other fatalities going forward. And it's been welcomed by the president of the AA, Edmund King, as well, and also Claire Mercer, who started a campaign, Smart Motorways Kill, in 2019. Her husband, Jason, was sadly killed as a result of waiting for help or being on a hard shoulder.
Well, that's right. And Nikki, how do you feel about smart motorways? Because the government is saying, because there is this call, as you say, for the smart motorways that are currently in existence, for them to reintroduce a hard shoulder. I think what the government said is they're going to be a bit of a refit, so that there are going to be 150 more emergency stopping places. But I don't think there's been any commitment yet on whether they revert them back. I don't know.
No, exactly. I mean, I suppose what I worry about is I don't understand how they were rolled out if they weren't safe. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously, there would have been a lot of planning and a lot of testing gone on before they were introduced. I mean, I think it's good that they have committed to, changing something that, is in place. They're not just saying, well, it's there now, you've got to deal with it. And Rishi Sunak is listening, but he's listening because there's been this campaign from unfortunate people that have lost their loved ones. Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to sort it out. He has to sort it out sooner rather than later. If it's a commitment, he needs to actually, spell that out.
Yeah, and it was a commitment he made, actually, in the leadership challenge.
Nikki, you raise a good point there, where if there should have been testing done beforehand in order to prevent any fatalities, and that should have been done. But let's see what happens now. I mean, if there's going to be these emergency pit stops, hopefully they will work.
OK, let's move on to the Sunday Express, Nikki, because they've got a dramatic headline saying Royals on brink of collapse. What's behind this?
Well, it's quite an interesting take on, the plans for the coronation and the popularity of the royal family. Basically reporting that the think tank Civitas has done a study. Well, it's a counting game, really. They've done a tally of how many UK-based engagements the royal family have been involved in across the past 10 years. And what they found is it's actually gone down from 3,338 in 2014 to just 2,079. So that's a drop by 40%. And what they're trying to say in the Express, it's a little bit far-fetched, to be honest. They're trying to say that basically they're not good value for money. And if you can't see them in public, why would you care about them, especially if you're a younger person?
So people will be frustrated if they don't see enough. They're not getting their money's worth.
They're not getting their money's worth, basically. Yeah, and you know, Queen Elizabeth always knew that you had to be out there seeing people, meeting people in order to stay relevant. So
I think we'll be seeing quite a lot of the royal family during the coronation, at least, which is on the front page of the Mirror, Edward. And we are learning a little bit more about who's going to be invited or get a position in front of a special screen in a special venue, for example. So what's the Sunday Mirror telling us about what we've
So the Sunday Mirror is saying that the COVID heroes, the nurses and doctors, will be invited to the coronation. But there's been a lot of not so much backlash, but a lot of people have questioned this as to what is going on at the moment with junior doctors and nurses on strike, to say, well, look, it's okay for nurses, doctors to be commended, or to say, well, look, you know, you're going to be invited to the coronation, but there are still people who are suffering, living means to end, food banks, not being listened to by government, and that should be a priority where those people should be listened to. And the people who saved us from COVID. I remember not knowing whether I had COVID. I was not working for 10 weeks. I had to miss my radio show. I didn't know what was going on. But the nurses and doctors, I had to go into A&E a couple of times because there was no access to see. They were just warriors. They did the job. It's okay them being commended now, but then it's the issue of the 5% connected to the nurses. One of the unions has accepted it. The other, they're not very pleased. The junior doctors as well, with 35%. It's clearly a discussion which is going to go on. But then I think the positive to this is that they're being acknowledged. But I suppose some people say that the acknowledgement should be extended further.
Well, that's interesting. And I noticed that in the Sunday Telegraph, they're also reflecting on the fact that the NHS are part of these, I think it's 4,000 VIPs. They're going to be a stand built outside Buckingham Palace, for example, with a screening that some of those people will be in. But they're saying that there are some Tory MPs who are saying that those who've promoted industrial action shouldn't be on the guest list. I don't know. I mean,
that just seems so unfair to me. At the end of the day, great to get a medal or great to get an invitation to the coronation, but you can't pay your mortgage with it. And that's what's getting the backup of so many NHS workers. They are really struggling to pay the most basic of bills. Like Ed said, they're using food banks, they're suffering themselves, and it's just not enough.
Yeah, and that's the point that the Sunday Mirror is clearly making there on its front page. Let's turn to the Sunday Times next, Nikki, because you were wanting to talk about this, about a further investigation into a breast cancer surgeon who's already in prison. Is that right?
Yes, this is quite a disturbing story, really. So apparently there's been the deaths of 650 patients of a surgeon who conducted breast surgery, in some cases completely unnecessarily, it's been found. And this relates to a surgeon who had worked for the NHS and 2 private hospitals around Birmingham. He's currently serving a 20-year jail term. And it's just one of those stories that you never want to read about, you never want to be the subject of. And it's actually the kind of investigation now into what has gone on is really trying to examine his motives for conducting these surgeries, because if they weren't necessary for health reasons, some of them potentially were for financial reasons, but some of them at the NHS weren't. So what was going on there?
Yeah, so he's serving a 20-year jail term after being convicted of 17 counts of wounding with intent, and now they're opening an investigation into some of the other patients that he treated in the past to find out what happened there. Let's take a quick look, shall we, Edward, before we go? We've got very little time. In 30 seconds, reflect on the Grand National, front of the Mail on Sunday.
Animal activists, they tried to ruin it. It was delayed by 14 minutes. Luckily, the race resumed. But as part of the headline in the Mail on Sunday, they say that they helped for this to be foiled. They helped the police and secret services, and they refer to them as a vegan mob.
Yes, they do call them a vegan mob, don't they? The animal rights activists had quite broad. What they're trying to change is the whole relationship between animals and the public.
And they also were highlighting died during the Grand National, and how many died yesterday.
We're out of time. Nikki and Edward, we'll see you again in the next hour. Thanks so much.
See you soon.